So Robert, we're delighted that you're here, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honour to be here tonight and talk about, well, I'm going to talk about private education, because that's, I think, the only thing I really know about. You guys have got the state education sector well covered. And, I went to school, but I'm afraid that is really as far as it goes. So, private education. Why did I write my book? Well, you have to blame a boy called Jonathan Henry, who was 12 years old when I was at school, and he was my best friend. And then one summer's day, I went to school and Jonathan wasn't there anymore. I went back to ask my mum what happened to Jonathan. She said, well, Jonathan's gone to another school, different school, and it's called Harrow, and he's going to have a lovely time. And hopefully you will see Jonathan again. I never saw Jonathan. That was the last time I saw Jonathan. But I did bump into lots of other Jonathans in my life. They used to crop up in my life, usually in sort of influential and important positions. And they used to be charming, usually bright, fantastic people. But it was niggling me. It was niggling me since I left school. What is it about this other education system that creates different people who turn up with all this confidence and sort of a seemingly innate ability to pick all the best jobs? But it became, it was more than a niggle, it became a burning desire to get to the bottom of this, because to me it was if you're talking about equality, fairness, democracy, meritocracy, it's the elephant in the room. We need to deal with our two-tier education system. So, obviously, last year even, you couldn't talk about abolishing, reforming, even interfering with private schools, because it wasn't on the agenda. Private schools, the public schools, were an integral part of British society. They were an integral part of the fabric of Britain. Waterloo was won on the playing fields of Eton. Our empire was created by these public schools. Our history is all about our public schools. And when I went to write my book, I approached the two oldest public schools, Eton and Winchester, and I asked them whether the headmasters would like, or even just one of the teachers would like to talk to me about the schools. They wouldn't even pick up the phone. And I don't know why that was, but it might have been because they cottoned on to the fact that I discovered that actually, in 1815, just Battle of Waterloo, Eton didn't have any playing fields, actually. That's a myth. And the schools, when they were first created 600 years ago, they weren't actually set up for privileged, wealthy kids. They were founded by medieval Christian philanthropists with the sole purpose to help the poor and indigent children of the community. And that has, over the years, that function, that ambition has been robbed. So, what a difference a year makes, because now we have newspaper columnists falling over themselves, calling for the abolition of private schools. You can't move for someone saying what a great idea abolishing private schools is. And the reason for that is the Labour Party, to be perfectly frank. Because when I wrote my book, nothing really happened. We got a lot of pushback, a lot of criticism, but from the private schools, but not much happened until Labour Against Private Schools took the baton and turned it into the motion that it became, and the policy that it might actually be if Labour get into power. And because now it is blindingly obvious, I think, that and it's become perhaps blindly obvious to one or two other people. If you believe in democracy, equality, if the big society, if we're all in it together, then of course you've got to change a system which allows a narrow section of society to buy an advantage over everybody else. And if you want to make that change, if you want to reform that system, then you need an equality of argument. You need a fair debate. We need to get on even terms with the public schools, because we can't continue to allow them to continue to make their propaganda unchallenged. So they tell us that the abolition of the private schools is such a dangerous thing that it would cost the state £7 billion. Boris Johnson said this a couple of weeks ago, it's going to cost £7 billion. Well, I'm part of a think tank called Private School Policy Reform, and we looked at the maths. That is utter rubbish. The figure we came up with is £2.3 billion, which is identical to the amount that the schools escape in charity exemptions, tax exemptions, for their charitable status. So let's nip that one in the bud. Then they tell you that, of course, you'll be depriving the community of this wonderful institutions that contribute so much. But the truth is that of all the schools, all the 600,000 pupils in this country, only 6,000 attend public schools without having to pay a single penny. Everybody else has to pay. There is no charity. That's 1% of kids who go to private school get a free education. And remember, when they were set up 600 years ago, every kid got a free education because that was the whole point of them. Then they tell you that it's my human right to send my kid to any school I want. I can send my kid to any school I want because that's my human right. You can't stop me doing that. Well, hold on. When we talk about human rights in this country, we balance rights against other rights. So we talk about the right of not just a parent to educate their child, but we talk about the rights of children who are deprived of a fair chance in life. That's just as much as important. And it's up to the courts to balance that right. And let's remind ourselves that the Human Rights Act wasn't established or founded 50 years ago to help privileged parents to educate their children at fee-paying school. That wasn't the point of the Human Rights Act. That was not in the architect's prospectus. So let's look at the bigger picture. Let's look at what we want to do. Let's talk about creating a better society for everybody, because there are 4 million children in this country living in relative poverty, and they will go to their graves never knowing that there are charities called Eton, Winchester, St Paul's, Westminster, whose new purpose is to advance the life chances of already very wealthy, privileged children. There's an African proverb: it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. But it takes all the children from all the families to raise a community. Thank you.